Hello and welcome everybody to the 167 podcast. In today's episode, we're speaking all about culture and how to become a culture creating leader that permeates through the whole organization. Stick around. We'll see you soon. There's a saying in the Bible that everybody in your room in a coffee shop is missing. Hey, welcome everybody to the 167 podcast. It is so good to see you and to be with you. We're super excited about today's episode. Just a huge word of welcome to everybody that is watching on YouTube or joining us via any of the audio streaming platforms. We're so grateful that you can be here and be a part of the 167, which quite simply is, we believe and we know there's 168 hours in the week. Maybe one of those are spent in a church or a house of worship somewhere, but you still have 167 other hours where there can be value-added content, where there can be growth, where there can be development, and we like to have some fun, helpful conversations around possibly what some of those things can be. So we want to introduce ourselves. My name is Phil, joined by Swen.
That's right. I'm Swen. Like, I can't introduce myself. How's that? Anyways.
It's like, I'm Phil.
Yeah.
I'm Swen. No, I'm Swen.
Good times. The only thing we're missing, I mean, we've got amazing coffee and we're so thankful for it, but I went to Starbucks this week and they've got these amazing Christmas cups.
I've seen those all over Instagram, all on stories. I'm very jealous. You didn't get one.
No, I did. I threw it away because I mean, obviously you can't use it more than once.
You didn't gram that.
No. I feel like the coffee community that I'm part of would look down on that. They would not respect that.
So hold on. So is Starbucks not real coffee snob coffee? That's terrible. That's too mainstream, hey?
It's too mainstream.
It's very
hipster. If you follow my coffee drinking journey,
true.
It's Chemexes, it's siphons that are getting out there, it's all these experiences. Starbucks is like, I was too lazy to make coffee and I swung past the nearest place.
And it looks pretty cool.
I do enjoy the Americano. I'm just putting it out there. If I'm going to have an Americano, Starbucks is on top of that pile.
Are you going to be shunned now by any other coffee groups?
Possibly. But I just want to be inclusive of all of our listeners.
That's it.
And so there is no shame.
There is no shame.
But you probably wouldn't find me drinking it.
Right now. For the look, we might.
For the look, yeah.
It's so good to be joined by everybody today, and we're pumped. We're pumped about today. We've had feels like we've had a couple weeks where we haven't been able to film.
We have. It has been a bit strange because we have our new studio, which is upstairs from where we are right now. But we're trying to show off something that's happening this weekend. There's something new, something bling. Anyway, let us know what you think about our backdrop. We love it.
Yeah.
But then there was load shedding, and we filmed an episode from our garden,
which was great,
which was cool. It was taking podcast on the road.
I enjoyed that.
We should do that more.
Yeah.
I'm thinking beach. I'm thinking mountaintops.
We just got to find a day. We got to find the 3 days of the year where it's not windy.
Of course.
And then we hit the beach.
For sure. Or we travel with us. We become like to Joburg. We're traveling podcast. We just need a sponsor. and so
DHL.
Yeah, there was load shedding. We did it in the garden, and we've also been as a church going through like planning for 2022.
Yeah,
you can't plan that far in advance because of the way the world is right now. But so we apologize for the delay in this episode coming out.
Yeah,
but we are excited for it. Anyway, we are speaking all things culture.
Come on, man! I'm so excited about today. And if you did listen to our previous podcast, we're talking about problems and problem solving.
Yes.
And how to be a problem solving leader.
That's right.
And today, kind of the next installment, the next discussion point is culture, being a culture creator.
Good.
What culture is, why it's so important to your organization, to your family, to your church. And I'm very excited to speak about culture because it is the one thing that as there was more positions of leadership, as I started to lead more, it was really the truth of culture and the role that culture plays within ministries and within churches that I really saw come to the forefront of a ministry that was doing well, a ministry that was flourishing, a ministry that people actually wanted to be there and be a part of it and saw the vision. But when the culture was bad or toxic, it really was the one thing that I thought, geez, this brings serious obstacles, this brings serious trials to what we're trying to do here.
Absolutely.
And what the vision is. And culture is massive, and it's something we encounter, not just in church. I mean, we encounter culture with families, with work, in every space. It needs to be healthy.
I think it's important for us to understand, because vision is like it's oxygen for a leader. If you have no vision as a leader, you are going nowhere. No one's following you anywhere.
You're going for a walk.
But Sam Chand, or maybe he got it from somewhere else, but I heard him say that culture eats vision for breakfast. So just having a place to go to, but not having good culture, is going to ultimately sacrifice the vision. And so culture is vital, I think, for us. Not just as leaders, but I think even in the home. What's the culture? What's the atmosphere in your house? Atmosphere of your workplace? I think leaders have a unique place in that, because they get to influence culture very, very directly.
And they need to.
Because otherwise someone's going to set it, and it's not going to be what you want.
No. And then we're going to have problems and issues that we're going to need to solve. And we're like, well, why is this here? Well, someone didn't set the culture. Someone didn't explain it. And some of a really easy definition of culture is just, this is how we do things. It's the way things are done. It's the way we speak. It's the way we treat people. It's the way we think. It's the way we value what we get to do, and it's the attitude with which we do it.
I mean, that definition.
You're gardening now, so you'll probably. But the picture that I was thinking about before the episode was that culture is described as the soil. But I mean, you can have because we're speaking about vision now as well. You can have a vision for a beautiful garden. And then you can pair that vision with a great strategy. So maybe that can be, buying some great grass, buying some great plants. But at the end of the day, you can take your strategy, and if you plant it in soil that is unhealthy, you plant it in soil that doesn't have the right nutrients, the great vision and the great strategy ultimately come to an end because the soil wasn't healthy. The soil wasn't rich enough. So for us, culture is a great conversation to have, and even to define it for people, because having an awesome vision and having an awesome strategy, as sad as it sounds, sometimes isn't enough. When you put the big thing, when you open up the crock pot and you pour everything in, you need to have the right soil. You need to have the right culture, so that what God has put on your heart can actually come to fruition.
I think that's good. I think we inherit culture. But what happens when we come to the kingdom is Jesus sort of impresses kingdom culture onto us, kingdom values onto us. And so those are the values that anything can grow in, anything healthy will grow in kingdom culture. I remember this one story from a very, very prominent church leader, and planted this amazing church, still running and flourishing today. Huge, like almost a global movement.
Brilliant.
He says he came to the office one day, and he's like, I don't think I like our church.
Jeepers.
And he's like, and then he said he went to God with it, and God's like, you're the leader, fix it. And so he actually realized that he doesn't have to live
and tolerate
with bad culture. He can actually change it. That's why he's the leader. And he said obviously takes time, but like how that changes. And I think sometimes you can feel like you're a passenger with regards to culture.
Wow.
But you actually have a huge influence and role to play in culture, or the way that things happen here, and the way, like, I love that definition of yours. I think it's so helpful. I think we actually need to write that down so that people can carry that. Because you can't just have culture as like one person having culture. Culture is only real once it's running throughout everything.
It's the only time it's felt. If a new person walks into your organization or your church or your company, they're not going to feel what just the leader is doing, because they're not only interacting and engaging with the leader, they're engaging and interacting with everybody.
That's right.
So if the culture you could have a great idea of culture, but as a leader, if that isn't something that and we'll speak a bit about these things, but repeating and celebrating and honoring and giving prominence within the organization, and you're never really going to see it kind of permeate through everything that you're trying to do. And even with what you're saying about culture, and we have the ability and we kind of have the responsibility to change it when it needs changing. Do you think that's a great starting point for people, for leaders and for anybody in organizations, to actually just have a walk around, have a feel of what the culture is like within your church or within your company, and then to come to the realization that either, okay, cool, I love the definition, how we do things, I love that, or there's actually some things that we can change here, and there's some things that we can get better at, and let that be the starting point of saying, let's do that. Let's put maybe we've got the wrong people in place. Maybe we need to incorporate or do something slightly differently. But we should all start there by actually just getting a feel and just saying, well, what's happening? And sometimes we've been able to look at the fruit of a specific ministry, and we can say, well, judging the fruit, there's something that isn't right. And that's something that I tried to do when I started taking more positions of leadership within the church, is looking at the fruit of a ministry. And it was scary that how it was quick to diagnose the problem when you just spent some time. You just had a few meetings, you spent some time with the leaders, and you can quickly say, oh,
yeah,
okay, that's why there's no growth here. Oh, that's why things are done in a certain way. And there's many reasons for culture to deteriorate. There's many reasons for people to not focus on something. And I mean, even something that we can look at is just some people just don't feel called to it, but they've been in the position so long and they feel too bad to move away that they're like, well, geez, this is just what I'm doing, but the culture isn't healthy.
Yeah.
So just being able to I think it's great to start and to just gauge where we at, you know, where's our company at, where's the church at, and then to take the responsibility on that as a leader. We now have a few things that we can do to begin to shift and change the culture. Have you done that?
Yeah, that's very good. I think
it's kind of retired because I know you have, but I want to get the tools from it.
Yes. Like we have done that, but sometimes it's difficult for you to see culture for what it is. It's easier for someone who's new into an environment to see it than you to see it, because you've been in it for so long. You
could be part of the problem.
And actually, as a leader, you are part of the problem.
True, yeah,
because you made decisions either for or against, or you left something for too long, and you know you need to change it. Because ultimately, those things require a lot of courage, and they require leadership energy that maybe you don't have for that right now.
Wow.
And so, good or bad, the culture is what it is because you're there. And so, but to go around to change it. So there are some things, but I think what we did is, or what I tried to do was define who I am, who we are, and what is already natural that's healthy within our culture. And so, like, when people come to our church, it's, wow, we felt so welcome, we felt so warm.
Yeah.
And we found a lot of warmth. That is innate in Lara and myself, that we always try and be welcoming and warm and hospitable. And that's also the people that are around us in a sense. And so we've been able to deliberately build that. That was very deliberate.
Yeah.
And then some things that were not as deliberate, and some things were unhealthy. And so I think it's just also getting other people's eyes and opinions to go, okay, this is not actually very healthy. We need to change that. And I think it's been good. I think there's been I think it's a process, but sometimes you don't know what's going to be healthy culture until you know what unhealthy culture looks like.
Good, yeah.
So it's a process, I think. But one thing's for sure is you have to be intentional about it.
I was listening to some material, Pastor Phil Pringle, who was speaking about, he was getting to a church, and I want to get the details right, but I might be slightly off. He was arriving at a church, and I think he was going to minister there, and it was pouring with rain. And then I think he just, you know, you expect the dream teamers or the people that are serving there, you know, you to whip out an umbrella. You try to make the people that are arriving try to make it feel, and he just didn't have that at all. He didn't have that experience. He had a very negative experience. And then he actually did something that might sound hectic, but I think we'd value so much. He said he went over to the leader and he said, let's have a conversation about culture. let's speak about healthy. Let's speak about something that's going to bless you. Yeah, it's like, oh no. Let's speak about something that's going to move this organization forward. And long story short, he said that, you know, within a year, after having a conversation, after putting some practical things in place, within a year, he said that church, you arrive there and it's just so hospitable.
Yeah, that's great.
And such a lovely place. So that's encouraging to know that even if there are things that you might think, well, geez, I think we could do this a little bit better, with some constructive movement, with some training, with some teaching, with some personal work as the leader, you can bring positive change, and the culture can improve, and it can become a super healthy place. But just to echo your 100%. Point, it took somebody else.
Yeah, it's fresh eyes.
It's because normally, you know, we'd be inside. If it was our church, we wouldn't know that. But it took somebody to come in as a guest, as someone that was arriving, to say, jeepers, like, I don't think that is super hospitable. I don't think that's super welcoming. And then he was able to say, let's have a conversation about it.
It's true. It's true. And the funny thing is, like, that leader probably was a very servant-hearted person.
Probably.
And I think this is where we may be going in this podcast, is to say, like, how does that get from him throughout the church, in that case, the church organization? Because you go to a lot of places right now, and the, you know, these slogans on the wall, and we're service excellence, but you meet the person at the front desk and you're like, am am I interrupting you? Yeah. You know, I'm sorry to ask you for help. I mean, it is your slogan, but and just how we get that to translate from the person who is setting up this organization or leading the organization to getting to that end point. Because it's a scary thought to think that people, for instance, in church life, people are making up their decision about the church within the first 10 minutes of arriving on the property.
Yeah.
So they've never heard a worship song, they've never heard a sermon, but they've experienced your culture and are making decisions based on that, whether they're coming back or not. And so that can be quite a scary thing. It's like, oh my goodness, is our culture translating through to, I wouldn't say the lowest level, but through the exterior part of our ministry?
Yeah.
And that concerns me in some ways, because I know we've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
But in other ways, when it goes well, it's like, okay, good, we are winning in certain areas.
Yeah, I love that, and I think we've started the conversation well, because it's about, well, if that's the goal, we want to work out how we can get culture to permeate from the top to the tippy toes, to the very bottom, to the people that are just new to the organization but can sense it. I think there's two starting things that we've spoken about. It's one, the leader needs to understand it starts with them, and even just evaluating and analyzing within yourself, and then to define, okay, well, what is our culture, or what do we want it to be? Because if we can't define it or write it down, or the slogans on the wall, they suck when you don't do them, but if you do them, they're brilliant reminders. And it's a great way for people to reinforce what we're doing and what we're trying to think about. So I think that as leaders, it's great. Let's figure it out for ourselves. Let's make sure we are people of the culture. Not saying we're loving and welcoming, but you'll never see me shaking a hand. It's like they just don't go together.
Sure.
And then secondly, it's just, who we are, and it's defined, it's written down, people understand it. And I would say another thing, just that really helps, is helping people being celebrated for the guys that are repeating the culture and are doing the culture, because I get to a place where I'm like, you guys should just be doing this. Like, this is who we are, this is what we do, this is how we handle things, this is how we get things done, this is how we solve problems, this is how we do it, so just do it. And you can get to a place where, well, what gets celebrated actually gets repeated. So we need to get into a space where, even if people just in the smallest way, even if people just in a way that seems kind of insignificant, but if they're doing what our culture is, it means that somebody else is going to be on the other end of that, someone else is going to see that, someone else is going to experience that. If it's something to do with hospitality or welcome, they're going to feel welcomed by it. And if we can celebrate people for doing the culture, I believe that's how it can get repeated. That's how other people can look on. Because, let's be honest, when you're seeing somebody else get a high five for something, you're like, hey, I want to.
Yeah. Because we want to be liked. We want someone to be proud of us and to be pleased with what we're doing.
Yeah, we do. So to see that, even for other people, it's like, oh, so that is what this leadership honors. That's what this leadership finds as something praiseworthy or honor worthy. You can celebrate it. And I think there's a lot of things that you can celebrate in an organization and in a church, but if you can celebrate great culture, I think that's an awesome, and we found that is an awesome way for people to be like, okay, what I'm doing, because sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes it's not easy to just be a person of the culture and to do things, because sometimes your emotions want you to act not so welcoming, or sometimes you want to do things in a different way. But if you can understand, well, at the end of the day, this is what we're called to do, this is who we are, you'll take those steps. And celebrating somebody, I find, is a great way to just affirm that in their hearts and for the people around
100%.
That are looking on.
100%. How do you think people can celebrate because you want to celebrate what you want to reinforce?
Yeah.
So how can people celebrate what they want to reinforce?
For us, I think there's a couple of things that you can do. I think private celebration is awesome. I do think that's great if you're just going to, give somebody a high five and speak to them one-on-one. But public celebration, I feel, is a great way to do it. And it's not about making other people feel like they're uncelebrated. It's just about, hey, we want to affirm this for everybody, that this is the type of culture that we love. This is the type of culture that we do. So what we like to do at some of our Dream Team events is that we will play games, we'll give out food, we'll give out ice cream, and then there'll be a time where we'll actually call out people's names. We'll invite them to the front. We'll speak what they do and how they form a part of who we are and why we do what we do, why we say what we say, how they fall in line with that, and then we'll give them a chocolate, or we'll give them a gift gift card, and it will just be about, thank you, so we appreciate you, we love what you're doing, we see you, you are seen, and keep going, keep moving in this light. So I love those Dream Team nights because they're so fun and exciting, and it's awesome to be able to celebrate people publicly, give them something. So it is something that you need to be intentional about. Like a guy like I heard Craig Rochelle speak about on his podcast, that he used to give gold stars to people, which I think that is hilarious. But if somebody's having a really good week and he's impressed with them, he had gold stickers, gold stars, and he would just give them. He says, you're a star. I love what you're doing. I see what you're doing. And that also rises or brings an increase to I don't want to say like employee appreciation, because they're not employees, but you feel like you belong.
Yeah.
You feel like you're loved.
You're seen, you're appreciated.
You're heard. So for me, I would say a great way to celebrate people publicly, do things where you get your staff or your employees or your church together and make a thing of it.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Very good, very good. And even for people leading in different areas, like for instance, us, we want to do that from the very top level of our church, or the senior level of leadership. But that would be an incredible win if people who are leading teams within there, so within our different ministries, are doing a similar thing. That's not just one layer that's doing it, but at every layer that can happen. I think that's something we have to continue to learn from and get better. And I think that's the point. You're never going to get to a point where it's perfect. When it comes to culture creation, there's a lot of plates that are spinning, and you have to keep visiting the different plates at different times. And when you see it and adjust it and tweak it and celebrate it, and it's this constant movement happening. So you're never going to have perfect culture. But I don't think that's the goal. I think healthy culture is the goal. And healthy things you have to just keep on working at. Putting nutrients into the soil, back to your analogy, that are going to help bring health to the soil. Because if the soil is healthy, the plant will be the benefit. The person, the organization, the church, the ministry, whatever, will be a benefit to the soil that's being created.
I think it's about being aware, because I think a great place also to be in is to just be aware of hey, we have a culture. So whether it's good or bad, we all have culture.
Yeah.
So it's to be aware of it, and I think once we can be aware, we can start attending to the spinning plates.
Yeah, good.
We're aware now that plates are spinning.
Yes.
In the past, a lot of them were dropping, and we weren't focusing on it. But now we're aware that they're spinning, and it's not about, okay, cool, from tomorrow you have to, because culture doesn't work like that. Culture takes time. But now we're aware and we're speaking about it, and it's a part of our language, and it's a part of our meetings, and it's a part of what we're trying to do, because we know that it matters.
Yeah.
We know that it's important.
Yeah. One of the benefits I find from healthy culture is that the people who are anti that culture start sticking out like very sore thumbs.
They do, don't they?
And they almost pull themselves out of it because they don't feel connected to it.
Yeah.
That, or they get taken out.
I find that those people were, even before that moment, they were already not really for the vision and in our context, the church. I mean, I remember, just as you say that, I remember like back in the Alcana days when we would No, it's not bad. It's not about us. Back in the Alcana days where we were just trying to get people to fill up from the front. And that helps atmosphere, that creates space for people. If you're a brand new person, you probably don't want to sit front row, so it creates space for those people as well. It's a culture thing. But we also had people in the church that had their seats. And it was their seat, and it all, like, they were literally, it felt like hands were going to be thrown when we put those tensor barriers in, and it was awkward because people want to, and then you but we're in a church, dude. Like, this
be
isn't
nice, like this, be kind.
Like, this isn't like. This isn't something else. This is not some like business. This is church. Like, and remember, we exist for the person who's not here yet.
Yeah.
So if we can somehow, by doing something small, create a more positive environment for a new person, that's our culture. But we found that some people, it wasn't their culture.
Yeah.
They thought differently, and church was something to be kind of attended and observed and consumed instead of that. And that was a great way. Just to add to your point, they stuck out.
Yeah.
And you find that those people, once they're made super aware of what the culture is, they don't really stick around.
No, they don't. Yeah, listen. Within our church, if you're a consumer, you probably you will not last.
Probably not going to enjoy it.
No,
really, to be honest,
no,
we're not going to kick you out. You're just probably going to leave.
Yeah. And I think that's just coming back to like what we're trying to create is a very strong discipleship, which is involved in different areas. Good. Not perfect, but it requires sacrifice. It requires service. So we're trying to be very intentional about that kind of atmosphere.
Yeah.
that we're not trying to create a consumer culture. We're trying to create a laying life down kind of environment.
Exactly.
But there's another thing I just want to change from that point. But obviously, you see there's incredible businesses and companies out there, and you see, oh wow, I want to be like them, and then so I want to adopt their culture. I want to adopt something. Can you just pick a culture and go with it, or do you think there's something deeper in the process of discovery when it comes to culture? Because I mean, some people might not really know what their current culture is. So like, how do people discern or understand like what kind of culture they should be?
I think it'd be awesome if we could just look at something successful, copy them, and I think it'll be successful. It just doesn't. I think it just doesn't work that way. I think what makes God also so cool is that when He puts people and leaders in positions of leadership and influence, like if you're leading a business or a church, you're there specifically. You're there to bring what you uniquely do in a great way. So I think with culture, it's very important that the leader, it needs to be set with the leader. And the leader needs to get a very deep conviction and understanding about what their culture is, what they value as a leader, and what they would love to see repeated. And the reason that's so important is because a culture that isn't the leader, I think it's going to be much harder to sustain and maintain if it's not you, because it's going to feel so forced. It's going to feel like hard work coming every Sunday or in the week, and you're trying to maintain something because that's how Apple do it or that's how Amazon do it. It's not how you do it. And God is very smart, and He's put you in the position for a specific reason.
For sure.
And there's things that you do naturally that's going to bless the organization or the church that you do. So I would think, you mentioned the word discovery, that's the journey. If you're sitting and you're listening, you're like, well, what is my culture? It's I wouldn't say it's easy. It takes time, intentionality, but you can figure it out by really just asking yourself some questions about what you value, what you find important, what's important to you, what makes you feel welcome, what makes you feel loved, what you feel God has placed on your heart, and begin to write those things down. And then you begin to understand and formulate a bit of a culture document, a bit of an understanding that hey, this is for my family, this is my organization, this is where I think God is calling us. I don't know, you lead a church, so you'll have more insight than me, but that's just what I feel like if it's something that isn't you, you're going to come every day or every Sunday and you're going to, okay, well, what do we believe in again? But if it's you and it's on you and it's on your heart, on your mind, without even thinking, without even referring back to the culture document, you're like, hey, this is not us. Because you can feel in your heart already, this is not me.
Yeah. I like the way that you expressed that. I think that you can, like we were talking about before this, is that you can only be culture. You can't necessarily create it. It flows from what you accept, what you tolerate, what you teach, what you celebrate, all of those things. And I think lessons that I've learned, that I'm learning, is not to be apologetic for what you're trying to establish and be. And some people will like that culture and some people won't. But the goal is to be healthy, not to be fitting for everybody. So I think you've got to be it. I think there's probably some that will be more aspirational for you in the sense like, I want to be more like this. I want us to be more like this.
It's great to take like things that stir you,
and resonate
and inspire you. But I think that's cool because it's kind of already there as well.
It's there's a desire at least.
Use the word resonate. You're like, because it's there. It's kind of there. It's like it's taking the whole thing and just copy pasting it, where I just think you might struggle.
Yeah, I agree. I think trying to copy and paste someone else's values and culture, it can help you in the short term. But it's not going to be authentic and true, and it's going to be seen throughout. Because you're not going to uphold it. Because it's not who you are.
Do you think it's a good way to start?
I think it is a good way to start. I always hear like great artists or aspiring artists copy other great artists until they find their own rhythm or they find their own creativity, and that's how I've felt it as well. Like even as a preacher, you maybe start out copying someone's style, you copy their method. But eventually you fit into what works for you. And I think it's the same way with culture. And so that's why it's good to make as many mistakes as possible in the beginning. Because it's beginning to formulate more of who you really are and be comfortable with that. So I think, it reminds me of a story from scripture where David is drawing up and coming up to this battle line with Goliath and the nation of Israel, and Goliath is taunting them, and then David's like, as a 16-year-old, yeah, I'll fight him. I'll cut his head off.
Is there no one else?
I want to live my life without paying taxes, and I want to get shacked up with the king's daughter.
That was not a bad offer.
That was a great deal
from King Saul.
A great deal. But when you see a 16-year-old come and claim that, you're like, yeah, I don't know. Like Saul, I don't know what he thought. But anyway, where he puts this armor onto David, and David's like, listen, King, respectfully, I cannot fight with this armor on. It's not me. And I think you've got to find that. Like if you just copy it, you're actually putting on what someone else is born with, and it doesn't fit quite right. But then you got to go that there's another part of it, because not everybody in our church can create or be or add to the culture of what we're trying to create. Because we can't have 300, 400, 500, 600, 700 people trying to create their own variations of culture.
You won't be able to lock down on anything.
No, exactly. And so we have to have a standard for our culture. And what's going to happen is that people will adopt it. It'll resonate.
Yeah.
They'll love it. And actually carry that culture as part of their own.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to create as a church, is that people will carry our culture.
Yeah.
Not that people will determine their own culture within our culture.
Correct.
Because it's not going to mix. It's not going to work.
Would you say that a good sign that maybe the church or the organization that you're in is not for you is if there isn't that kind of resonating with the existing culture, with the culture that's been set by the leader, and people have that? That's not necessarily a bad thing. Maybe it's just a sign of, okay, I need to be a part of maybe something slightly different.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people do make their home based on culture, and even if you don't understand that's, if you don't have the wording for it, you have a feeling about it. And you know how you feel is when people go, I feel like I'm home. That's an amazing thing to have an experience in. I do also think that sometimes people need to submit to a culture.
Yeah.
Because they value all the other things.
Yeah.
And so, hey, I want to submit to this culture, and it's a decision that you have to take. But if you can't do that authentically over time, like we were saying, it's gonna bump up against who you are.
Yeah.
And you're gonna want to find something that's resonates.
Yeah. Very good. I think resonate's a good word.
Yeah, I like it. It's the same frequencies that ping.
Just comes off the bat nicely.
Yeah, exactly.
And we asked a question in the beginning about ways that we can let culture, or how we can get culture to permeate from the top to the bottom. And just while we're talking, and just another one comes to mind, it's just that consistency, and just an ability to keep repeating, keep bringing culture to the forefront in the many different tasks and activities that your organization or your church does.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't get repeated, if it's not something that people are constantly hearing, not something that people are being reminded of, being pointed to, given vision, given purpose to, this is the type of people we want to be, how can anybody remember and apply and become the people of the culture, or be able to apply the, so you've got to almost have an ability to see opportunities every day,
right,
or every time that you meet, to incorporate. It doesn't have to be the whole culture statement or document, but just a reminder of who you are. So you're also
in that moment,
using
it as a teaching opportunity
where it makes sense. So like you've also shown great, like in some prayer meetings before service, a great time. When you're doing announcements in a service, a great time to just remind people a little bit about who we are, what our culture is, and finding that we can't expect the church and then be angry about a culture that doesn't reflect who we are. When we only speak about it maybe at the vision service once a year, or we only speak about it at these big events or conferences, it's got to find its way into your daily.
That's good.
Find a way into your everyday, and then I think you're really winning is when your leaders also start finding ways to incorporate the culture in their daily, in their life.
I think that is the win. That is the win. It passes on down the link, or other generations of leaders are carrying that same heart and teaching it, because you learn more when you teach. I think you're spot on. Like I think that's something that we have to continue to get better in. And as a leader, you probably think, we always think, I've said it so much.
It does. It kind of feels like, geez, am I sounding like a gong? That's just clanging and nothing makes sense. But it's got to be this repetitive, but you can learn to say something in a creative way.
For sure.
And you can learn to package something in a way that, but it's got to be, hey, this is who we are. And it's got to come through as often as possible. Because even me, if I just think about how my brain works, if I'm not hearing something or reading something on the regular, I'm going to forget. And I'm going to resort back to a default. And a default is often often something that is easiest, not necessarily what we want to produce in people.
Yes. Yeah, because I mean, we went through this process a couple of years ago of sort of getting culture out of my head onto paper. And I'm realizing I actually need to do that more and more for our church, for our organization, to actually get stuff that's in me out of me and onto paper where it can live beyond me. And so, man, I've got to write that down. That sounded
needs
so
to live
good.
Beyond me. Well, we've got it on film.
I'll rewatch that.
Yeah.
But you know, I love it where in Habakkuk chapter 2, you know, this is like God says to Habakkuk, write the vision down so that people can run with it. And I love that. That for me stirred me to write stuff down.
Yeah.
And so we went through and we have these 10 culture points.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I get the 10, but I also, through conversations with people, realized that 10 is actually too much for people to remember.
Wow.
So we've like subcategorized them into 4.
Yeah.
You know, and so that if we can just keep communicating those big paragraphs or the big like those headings of the 4, then we can bleed in with the others, right? Like we want to be an empowering culture where we give people opportunity to serve. But also empower people through prayer, and we want to empower people through. Sorry, I don't know who's phoning me now.
How dare they?
Yeah, how dare they? They interrupted me. Can you believe it? And empowering other people through speaking life. So, like, we want to be an encouraging environment and culture. So, I think just writing it down and making it as simple as possible so that it's easier to translate and transfer. So, we've tried to do a lot of teaching, but I don't even think we've scratched the surface.
No, we haven't.
To be honest, yet. And so hopefully we can continue to learn that.
Yeah, but that's the work we're talking about, permeating through the organization and through the church. The only way it can do that if people have access to it. There's a document, there's something written down, so that not only in our context again, not only on church on a Sunday, but it's happening in life group, it's happening in youth, it's happening in kids' church in a form that's understandable.
I've got a very interesting story for you, and for the listeners here. I went to somebody that I know. I went to like a shop that they own, and I know their heart. They will do anything to satisfy the customer.
Okay.
Like, honestly, anything to satisfy the customer. So I rock up there and they're not there. So I walk in and it's almost like, okay, like I could see already I'm not dressed in a certain way. I don't think they're very interested in what I'm about to buy. And I'm like, immediately I'm like, this is not the heart. Yeah, I know that.
Wow.
And I'm like, hey, this is what I'm looking for. And like, yeah, no, we don't have that. But like our competitor down the road has it.
Our competitor.
No, that's not the words they use. You have to fill in the blank. And I'm like, oh my head, I think this guy would pretty much roll over and cry
if he was watching.
If he heard this. And it's not a knock. I'm just saying, for me in this conversation, it's so important. Because we might be running things, but right at the edge of what we're running when we're not around, the culture is different. And as a leader, that's scary. But also on the flip side of that, the power is if you can get that right, that you don't always have to be in it and on it, that people can experience your heart and experience the life-giving value and culture in it, because people on the very edges of what you're doing are carrying it, and you know that they're representing you well, and what got them in is now going to get other people in because they're carrying it.
Yeah,
I think that's the power of culture.
Yeah, definitely.
That it provides a healthy environment without you having to be in the room all the time.
I think a great win is if we could be a fly on the wall in like different rooms, different parts of the organization or the church, and you just overhear conversations that people are having with each other, with new people, with other leaders, and you hear the culture overflowing in the conversation. You hear the culture overflowing in how they treat people, how they look after people. I think that's when you know, okay, we're beginning to do something.
Yeah.
We're beginning to do something right here. Yeah. And the culture is in fact permeating throughout everywhere, that people are sensing. And I think that's our heart for our church, and I think that's our heart for everybody that's watching or partaking in this, is that, like you said, that there will be a culture that maybe you can join in and be a part of in a church or in an organization, but there will might be a time where you need to develop a culture that starts from within, and you put it down and you make it available for people
very good
to access that and to learn it and to apply it in their context as well.
Good. I think maybe to leave people is like, what is it? What is the culture environment you're trying to create or trying to be? Think of that. Think through that. Write it down. Pray over it. and then find ways to pour that out into other people. Correct. I think that's, and if you're not the culture creator within your organization, you certainly are in your family, but in your organization, then be a culture carrier.
Yeah.
There is so much power in being a culture carrier.
Yeah.
Just helping it spread throughout the organization.
I would make it your mission to carry culture well if you're not the culture creator, because you might not be, but if you're on a staff or some sort, you are definitely a catalyst in culture being spread and culture 100%. Being taught. So I would veer away from a mindset that says, well, this isn't like my thing.
Yes.
That I started. I would go, let me carry this thing as hard as I can. And be a culture carrier, be a culture spreader, because there will be a time when you are setting the culture and you want people to be culture carriers.
For sure.
Not people who are just...
And you want to reap what you've sown.
Precisely.
100%. Well, thanks so much. It's been a good conversation. I've certainly been re-sparked in some areas.
Reminded and encouraged.
Listen, we need to have a conversation.
About culture. I want to talk to you a little bit about culture. Brilliant. Well, we want to thank everybody for joining in today via YouTube or on our audio podcast. Again, want to remind you, if the content is helpful and valuable to you, please like us, subscribe us on YouTube. You can rate us on any of the audio podcasting platforms, and you can reach out to us at any point. I think the easiest one is through our Instagram.
On the gram.
Yeah, 167. Our media producer has been releasing some great content that we're trying to share as often as we can. Good, yeah. So follow us on Instagram. You can get that more of 167 in bite-sized snippets, and you can also DM us there if you've got any questions. We're on that and we see what's happening there. But thank you so much. God bless everybody. Thank you, Swen.
Thank you, Phil.
Yeah, come on. We'll see you guys same time, same place next time we chat. Cheers.
Come on.